gate of to complete the 4 gates of entrepreneurship. Let us welcome our next speaker who will discuss Gate 4, Self-Leadership and Resilience, or also known as the AQ Essential. I'm sure we're all excited and I am too. Let me now introduce to you our next speaker. Ryan K. Cruz is the visionary and founder of Nippon Hasha and AOJ Umaya. Am I saying that right? Hope I am. Nippon Hasha and AOJ Umayi Incorporated. He presides as the CEO of these companies that own and operate brands such as Ramen Yushoken, Mendokoro Ramenba, Kazunori Japanese Restaurant, Marudori. Wow, I am a big fan of all your brands actually, and also the soon-to-be 1210 launch. Wow. Before being an entrepreneur, Ryan had numerous stints in sales and marketing, and also in brand management for Unilever Philippines under Selecta for several years. He has had a number of businesses in the last 2 decades in different industries such as logistics, finance, gaming, and amusement. Currently, he has businesses in both food and beverages industry and in the fine dining, fast casual, and food kiosk spaces, as well as automotive sectors. Wow, such a diverse portfolio. He is also active in doing consulting work and speaking engagements for leadership and organization culture, providing mentorships to several restaurant and business owners. Lastly, he is an active member of the Entrepreneur Organization, or EO, and is the representative and champion for food and beverage sector for Asia. Everyone, without further ado, please welcome Ryan Cruz.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and it's certainly great to be part of this. Hello, friends. I'm Ryan Cruz, and as you can see and as you heard from the introduction, I own and operate a number of brands, and today I'll be speaking about particularly my main businesses, my ramen brands, Ramen Yushoken and Mendokoro Ramenba. So let's get to it. I don't have a lot of time. So I founded this business about 10 years ago, and this is actually our 10th year. And it's an idea that I came up with about 15 years ago when I felt that I saw a gap and an opportunity in the market. And this is what you want to think of when you bring a product to life, is that what exactly are you doing? Why are you getting into business? And what you want is you want to either, one, you solve a problem or do something better. And better could mean either it's cheaper, it's faster, or it's just simply better in terms of quality. And if someone told me that I'll be managing a business for 10 years with these kinds of lines nonstop, I'd probably tell them that they were crazy. Now, there's one thing that I wanted to share with you guys, and that I feel that it's very easy for people to be looking from the outside in and think that, you know, we feel that we got everything together, that we know exactly that we're doing, that we've achieved success, etc., etc. When in fact that couldn't be further from the truth. It exactly is the opposite, where we don't wake up and walk the earth and feel like, oh, you know, we've had lines for 10 years and this is not going to stop. In fact, what I tell the team is you shouldn't let the swagger of the restaurant get to your heads, because you will lose sight of what you need to do, and you will lose focus in the fundamentals that you need to apply to the business. Because the restaurant graveyard is actually filled with a lot of great concepts. And while there are many reasons why, probably 2 of the 3 reasons is because of management indifference. And the second is because of a string of bad decisions. And what you'll find is that you're usually just 1 or 2 major decisions away from falling by the wayside. So we've been certainly enjoying this for a number of years. And we've always maintained an attitude of waking up and trying to prove ourselves every day. And having that mindset of humility has always allowed us to really second guess our best decisions and even review what we feel that is right, to ask ourselves, how do we know that we are actually right? And trying to see it from the perspective of our customers. And of course, not having an ego and a pride in the business, because that is so important in having an open approach to what you need to do for the success of the business. And if you were part of these lines, I have to say I apologize. We're trying to do what we can to expand to reduce these lines. And thank you for your patience and understanding. So this is certainly something that we've been seeing in our branches for a number of years, although it did take a couple of years as well to build up to this. And then, of course, in 2020, this happened. And I akin COVID as sort of like a Darwinian extinction event that ravaged the industry. That anyone who was fragile or at the fringes of profitability, just got crushed. And it was certainly a very tough time for business leaders, something that we all had to face simultaneously. And that was what was so unique about the situation. And for me, mentally, it was tough because, when you have an imposter syndrome like I do frequently, and an imposter syndrome, if you're not familiar, is where you have a view of yourself, by yourself, of what you feel other people see you as. And when this thing happens, sometimes you don't know, is it me, Ryan K. Cruz, a person? Is it Ryan K. Cruz, a CEO? Is it my business, or is it really just the market dynamics that lead to an outcome such as this? And it was certainly tough because when the lockdown was announced, I was in a big state of denial, because you have to understand that I used every single fiber of my being in the many years leading up to this event for the businesses not to close. And we have come to closing many times, although temporarily because of supply chain issues, manpower issues, and even equipment breakdown. And I always tried my best to make sure that we would be able to keep our doors open and serve our customers every day. So for us to be forced to close our doors was something that was very tough for me. And for the first 2 days, I was just literally staring at the ceiling. And what I did was I decided to write a letter to my managers and to my organization. And I said a number of things there, such as believing that a longer lockdown is healthier for the economy than a series of smaller lockdowns, that we will finally be able to have time to do whatever we wanted, because we always would say that we had no time before. But last and most importantly, I ended the letter saying that let's just remember that companies who manage the crisis in a clear and compassionate manner will always end up creating more value for the companies in the long run. And so after that, I did a sort of a review, and I didn't believe that the government was going to impose just a 45-day lockdown, and instead told myself, why don't I double that just to make sure that I'm able to protect my business? And when you're faced with that situation, you have to ask yourself, now what? And the now what is making sure that we're able to leave the pandemic whenever it might end. At that time, we didn't know. It still technically hasn't ended. And keep our DNA intact. Because sometimes you survive a crisis, but you're no longer the same organization. And that's what you have to be very careful of. So what we were able to achieve is something that we're extremely proud of, something that we were able to do in just 9 days. And these are the take-home kits. And the first version of it is what you see on the upper left side of your screen. And I'm extremely proud of this because if you understand how we are, that we actually don't allow takeouts, and a lot of people have a problem with that. And if I were to make you understand it for this moment, it's because my answer to my question a while ago was, I want to be as relevant as possible for as long as people want us here. And what I need to protect is the brand. So what do you think would have happened if I allowed takeout? People would be enjoying it in their houses in suboptimal situations and telling their friends, oh, it's not good. And I don't even understand why people are lining up. But of course it's not good, because when it comes to food, the precision of the control of the temperature can mean the difference between wonderful and disappointing. And that's why even until this day, we don't allow takeouts of finished products. You still have to cook it in your house. So this was certainly such a big moment for us. And I remember the moment when we announced it. It was, I believe, around the end of March, when we finished all the social media collaterals. And you're looking at the social media manager during that time because my team was actually still pretty small. And my EA was my assistant for that. And I told her, okay, at 10 p.m., upload the announcement. And what I did was I had the messenger accounts of Yushoken and Mendokoro on my monitor, the same monitor that I'm using now. And when the announcement was uploaded, it was like someone turned on a gushing faucet where the orders just came streaming in. And it was a mixture of both happiness and elation and fear as well. Because when I saw the number of orders come in, my thought to myself was, oh my God, we're screwed. Because I knew that we would not be able to fulfill all of those. We underestimated what the demand would be. And there were so many people that were so upset. And there were people who woke up at 7 in the morning the next day. They felt like, oh, I'm one of the first people to place an order. And yet 2 weeks later, we still haven't gotten back to them. And the reason for that was because the people didn't realize that from 10 p.m., from the time that we announced, all the way to 7 in the morning, we already received about 22,000 orders. And I usually have close to 30 people in my commissary, and I only had about 3 or 4 during that time because of all the lockdowns and checkpoints and whatever else. You weren't even allowed to go out unless you were a relevant business during that time. And I only had a few people in my base of operations, which was my Mendokoro Makati branch. So I had to issue an apology right away, and I issued 2. One from the brand, so that people knew exactly what they were dealing with, and the second was from me, because I had to take accountability personally for what happened, and I knew that we were going to be disappointing customers. Because when you deal with irate customers, that's like dealing with a raging bushfire, where if you choose to just do nothing about it, you're just allowing it to get bigger and bigger. So what I always do here is just to be completely honest. Just admit your mistake if you made a mistake, and just stick to your principles, and be honest and have an open communication with your customers, and that is extremely important. So this was such a big pivot for us, and we still actually do this to this day. It's still a good part of our revenue, and it actually helped us build data on where our customers exactly are from. And another pivot that we did was our food truck. And this really came from the frustration that every time we went into a lockdown or off it, I would see these new guidelines that restaurants would be allowed, let's say, 40% or 30%. Then it went all the way down to 10% for indoor. And anyone who has a business knows that no one will survive at 10%. You just rather not open. And I remember seeing that it was 50% for outdoor dining. But it was so strange because there were no restrictions on parks and open areas. So I was thinking that, hey, why don't we actually bring the restaurant into open spaces? But we've always want to elevate the experience of the customers. So what we did was to think of ways in which to enrich a food truck experience. Because usually with a food truck, your experience starts and ends when you order your food and you receive it, and that's it. But with us, even if you're in a table in the park, in an open space that's even not ours, you'll still receive full service. And this has allowed us to venture into areas which we don't have a presence in. It has also allowed us to build a lot of data on the market response for possible expansions. And it's also been able for us to connect to a new market and new customers, which has been tremendous. And this is something that we will be launching into private events later on, because the relationship of the viability of a food truck is inversely proportional to our expansions. Of course, if we are expanding into Capital Commons, which is where the photo on the top left is, then we won't have a food truck there anymore, and so on and so forth. And the last pivot, and the most minor that we did, was to have outdoor spaces. We didn't have this before because it's not really optimal to enjoy hot soup in a hot environment, and we have a tropical climate. So this was only something that we did in order to satisfy the safety concerns of our customers. But certainly not ideal, and we would prefer that we keep everyone in an air-conditioned space because that is the most enjoyable environment for our main product. So you might ask, how exactly were we able to do these pivots, and what were the factors that led us to be able to achieve this as a team? So I'd like to talk about three things because there are just so many things that I can talk about. And if I were allowed to, I'd probably talk about it straight for 2 weeks. But this, what I feel, are the three most important things that led to these moments. The first is something that occurs way, way before the actual moment, moment of truth, and that's developing yourself. Most of the time when people get into business, they want to get into it for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's because they just simply want more time, or they want to become their own boss, or they want to earn money. And while those reasons are fine, the problem there is these are the three biggest reasons that I've seen people get into business for. And the problem is the first is a fallacy, the second is misunderstood, and the third is a journey that's just going to take you much longer than you think. You're not going to have more time. In fact, you're going to have a lot less of it. You're not going to be your own boss, because if you're just in love with rank, position, and authority, then you're already missing the point. The idea is actually to lead your team and be of service to them. And if you're doing it properly, you're not going to be taking out funds from the business early on to fund your own personal life. You'd want to be constantly reinvesting it to put the position in a better position than it was previously. Aside from that, you really have to immerse yourself in the business. And what I did was, when I started this business, I made a list of all the things that I could do in order to put it in a better position. And one of those things was to work in every single position. So now if you ask me, I know exactly how HR works: finance, operations, logistics, supply chain, the working capital cycles, finance, etc., because no one came in and did it for me. I did it, and it's all from scratch. Now, right now, I'm speaking to you guys, and if I decide to peek in one of my branches for 30 minutes, I know exactly how it's supposed to be because I worked in every single position. Just one look, and I'll be able to tell if something is out of order. And that is the importance of building a foundation. One of those other things was actually to learn Japanese. And no matter how hard it was, I dedicate a lot of my hours for it because I have Japanese chefs. So you have to be able to be committed in doing whatever it takes in order to achieve the true pursuit of the success of your business. And you have to understand that the harder it is, the less people there are that are willing to do it, and therefore there lies your opportunity. Because guys, building a business is really no different from building a structure, where if you think about it, the most important part of the room or a house or a building is the one that you don't see. And if you think about how powerful that is, because when you ask any business owners such as myself, what they will tell you is that more than 80% of the things that we do are completely silent. But without them, we won't be able to do our magic, so to speak. So being able to achieve what you can in the moment is being ready for it. And if the foundation is not there and a storm comes, it will fall. So this is so, so critical, because I think most people are so concentrated on the output, and the other people are so concentrated on just getting started, but they're forgetting the practical tools of building a business, which takes a really, really long journey and a long time. So a lot of people are forgetting the in-between, from starting and to achieving to what you want. So it's just a really huge reminder that, again, it's a journey that's going to take you much longer than you think. Now, the second is concentrating on the value chain. And the value chain is really nothing more, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's everything in your supply chain that affects your customer experience. Now, a lot of people in this industry, the restaurant industry or the F&B retail industry, this is where they falter, because a lot of them, they start restaurants because they're passion projects, because they like to cook, they like to entertain people, and they don't normally change their behavior when they start a business where they go to the local grocery or market or supermarket, right? But what you need to understand is that the farther up you go, the supply chain, the more savings there are to be, and to the more opportunities to have. And Whether you buy cabbage in your big wholesale grocery such as Landers or SNR, or you buy it straight from the farmer, there is no absolute value to the customer if you buy it from a nearby convenient place rather than buying it from the source. But the price will definitely matter to them. People have this misconception that the magic of a restaurant happens when a customer comes in, he orders, he enjoys his food, they enjoy each other's company, they have a great time, maybe get drunk, pay the bill, and they leave. The reality is the magic of a restaurant happens in the back office of your purchasing manager. I know it sounds so corny, but that's the reality of this business, where you don't make a profit when you sell your food. You make a profit when you buy your supplies. And that's what I think people most often miss. Because the price of your suppliers will determine the price of your service and hence your value. When you reduce businesses to its essence, to its granularity, what you will find that in this industry, the retail fronts, the places that you go to in the malls and in the standalone locations, what these are is that they just simply compete in terms of consistency of experience. What the businesses compete in, again, in its granularity, are the value chains. These are really what makes a business a business. So it's all about the value chain of your structure. And the third is the realization that there are really two things that drive a business. The first is painfully obvious. It's money, right? The second is not so obvious to a lot of people. And that's actually the engagement of its people. And engagement is the strength of the mental and the emotional connection that employees have to their organization, their team, and their work. So if you talk about what exactly causes them to give their energy day in and day out, it's really engagement. And we as leaders, you guys who are thinking of starting a business and starting a team, this is really what you have to concentrate on. It's the environment that you create in order to increase engagement. So when you talk about engagement, it's really nothing more than concentrating on your people. It's really nothing more than that. And if you ask the question, like, what causes my guys to come to the aid of the whole team when a crisis happens? It's really this. Like, what causes my guys to hold someone's baby while they're eating their ramen in our bar format because they can't place them in a couch? What causes people to offer to take care of someone's dog outside the restaurant, or even offer to drop off someone's belongings rather than tell them to come back for it when a customer forgets about it? What causes one of my cooks to be able to constantly repeat and try to perfect every single bowl for every customer that comes in? That's engagement. That's the level of energy that they're giving. So if you choose to be indifferent to your people, then you're going to have a real problem. Remember, 100% of your people, your competitors, and your customers are human beings. If you choose not to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to understand how they work, you're going to have a real problem. So if you look at the top middle picture, that was actually taken on the day that we launched the Take Home Kits. And that was a very significant day for me, because when I walked in through those doors and saw the faces of the people who chose to be there at the time when we were all deathly afraid of the virus. I mean, I would go out and throw my clothes in the bin for fear that I carry the virus back home. And what I saw during that time were the faces of the many people, and so many more people who wanted to be there, that these were people that I had real human relationships with. And that's what they call the return on relationship. And when you look at a lot of data and research where, and this is hypothetical, of course, where the blue line represents a world-class team's performance, the red line represents a great team's performance, yellow for good, and green for mediocre. What you will find is that a lot of teams can actually come close to greatness. And the measure and the barometer for a great team isn't really the kind of level that they achieve in its peak form. The measure of a great team is how well you manage a crisis. And that's why I say that practically all ideas are worthless, because your ideas are nothing without the execution, and you need your team to be able to execute it well. When a team doesn't have culture, when a team doesn't have engagement, people won't care. They're going to think of themselves. Why is it that two of our biggest competitors took almost 2 months to pivot, even after they saw what we did, that they could just copy it? And while not naming anyone, it's because I knew exactly what the problem was, because they never chose to focus on their team. And so when they called upon their team to come to their aid, no one was willing to step up to it. So the mark of a truly world-class team is really how you deal with a crisis, because your culture or lack of it will cause you to fall apart. Now, what I'd like to say for you guys as my closing remarks, that if you're thinking of starting a business, what I'd like to impart to you today is, at first, as I said earlier, the journey will take you much longer than you think. Another is that the technical stuff, getting funding, physically putting up your store, and coming up with a product, that's actually the easy stuff, guys. The difficult part is what you should actually concentrate on, which is how well you're able to bring in talent and work with your team. People. Perhaps the biggest myth in this industry is that we have to concentrate solely, restaurant owners, on the customer experience. You have to disabuse yourself from that. While I'm speaking to you now, who do you think is taking care of my customers? Many times people like me get invited to these forums and they speak as if we know our customer more than anyone else. No, we don't. That's ego speaking. The people who know my customers the best are my frontliners, the people who actually interact with them every day. They know our customers' names, even their children's, what their preferences are. The truth is that I am no longer connected to the direct results of the company. I don't make a sale. I don't make a product that contributes to the sales in any branch. And business owners always say that their top priority is a customer, when in fact they haven't even talked to a customer in years. In our positions, we have much less of an impact to our customers than one of my guys. But what I can do is screw with someone's head, or even their life, who might impact my customer. Or I can choose someone who will then impact my clients as well. Now, guys, make no mistake. My methods have always had its doubters. And I still do. Where instead of seeing is believing, with most people, I will only see it. I will only believe it when I see it. But my method is rather, I believe it, and therefore I see it. I will see it. That's why it's so difficult for most people, because it's a leap of faith. But without it being this way, I would not have many people today who have proven to be critical in our business's health and growth. Now, I can no longer be accused of being a dreamer, because I know this sounds so fluffy, if what I actually used to imagine exists in reality. And that's why I tell my team that companies like us actually play a very important role for the industry. And people might ask, so does that mean you get everything right? Of course not. In fact, far from it. But are we operating completely counter to what is considered the normal business practice of today? Absolutely. And are we headed in the right direction? You bet we are. And here's the best part. Our numbers actually prove it. So here's what I would say to all the non-believers who think that numbers comes first. Numbers matter and performance comes before people. Guess what? We actually outperform our competitors year after year after year, and surprise even ourselves. So my wish for everyone today is a gift of compassion. Remember that very often your ability to work well with people, whether you're employed or provide jobs, will oftentimes determine how successful you will be in what you do. And that success is built on building and maintaining your relationships. Before you get to do that, however, you remember the first of the three things. You need to make sure that you develop yourself first. People often ask me, what's the most difficult part about being in your position? And my answer every single time is the fact that I have to focus on myself first, rather than the people that I lead. And if you look at a lot of data and research, what you'll find is that if a leader score is, let's say, 95 over 100, not saying that I'm that way, and your team score is 60 over 100, it's actually worth looking more at your 5 points rather than the team's 40 points. That's how much impact business leaders have to their team. Because you can't build anything if you don't build you. Some people, especially in today's age of social media, where everyone is constantly comparing themselves to each other, and it's all about more and bigger, that you believe that you have to be special in order to do exceptional things. But most of the time, all that it requires is a purpose with the best of intentions. So everyone, let's start where we are and start with the small things. Do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. Then let's celebrate each other's successes. Thank you, everyone.